How's it going, everybody? I'm joined here by Jerry Durham, who's the CEO at the Client Experience Co. We'll have him on today to talk about what he's doing to help PT clinic owners. And I'm really excited to have him on here. So, Jerry, real quick, if you could just introduce yourself, kind of give us that little bit of a synopsis of what you're doing, and then we'll get the show on the road.
Sure. Thanks for inviting me, number one. Um, so I'm a physiotherapist by training. I believe I'm in my 32nd year. I lost count. Pretty sure I haven't treated a patient in probably what, 8, 9 years at least. And I mean, really for matters of talking here, again, 32 years, I did everything early on in my career. I mean, everything, every part of it. And then opened up my own business in probably the late 90s by myself. And then joined with a partner probably late 90, early 2000s. And then had a practice for about, God, I'm not great with dates, but had my own practice so had my individual space for about a year, partnered up with someone. We grew it to 4 or 5 sites. And then eventually I got out because I wanted to do more of this work. And that's part of my journey here, is realizing the sales and the client experience part, the patient experience part. I learned while we owned our own business and had gone out of network at the time. So for those people who don't quite know, it just means, right, we took insurance, but we weren't contracted with anybody. So I learned a lot about the business. I learned a lot about people. I did the sales portion at that point. I answered all the incoming calls into my own practice for a year, talking to potential new patients, got them their cost at a time when no one was getting them their costs. So I saw the value of building up this experience for people by understanding the patient's journeys they were on, right? So, and then I realized later that what we had done really was looked at creating an experience for our clients that we want to recreate over and over. So I took all that I learned, saw success in my own business, and then started helping other practices and decided that I wanted to do it full time. So I got out of the business and have been doing that ever since, and now have the Client Experience Company. And also have a second business called Front Desk Sales Solutions, of which I hire and train virtual salespeople to take care of the front end parts of the practice, to basically be that salesperson to put people on the schedule who will arrive, pay, and stay. So that's my journey of 30 plus years. And here I am today. And I love this part of it. I love the business side. I really work outside of that clinical space, right? I work with the front end team. We connect the systems and processes to the providers, and then even the back end team with the billing, connecting all those dots so people can have a seamless, good experience beyond the clinical care.
Yeah, it seems to me like and I've been following you for a decent amount of time now. A lot of your content and the purpose of your business, from my perspective, who's someone, full disclosure, never treated a patient, was a patient at one point, is all about the patient's perception.
You got it. Yeah,
From that
great.
first phone call, how are they treated, and how do we make sure that they stay, versus the rotation of patients that a lot of clinics tend to see, of it's a one and done and that's it. They don't want to go back. So kind of walk me through, like, when was that point in, your treatment experience, treating patients, that you were like,
oh yeah, oh
I'm
my
doing
God,
this wrong.
yeah. Well, so I was treating, right, and then I got burned out. I got burned out mentally, not physically. I got burned out mentally, managing all these patients and feeling responsible and
Yeah.
not being successful. I really did. So I realized at that time that, hey, I like the marketing. So I started doing the marketing side of the business. And then what I really realized, there was somewhere in that journey where we went out of network. And this was like 15, 16 years ago. And as I like to tell everybody, out of network was the worst 4-letter word you could use in healthcare at the time. I mean, we were treating people when we were in network with zero copays, right? Zero financial responsibility. And so a lot of that. So now we go out of network. It didn't mean everybody was going to have to pay more. What I realized early on was it didn't mean everybody was going to have to pay more. It really meant that, wow, I can get people's costs now So before, when we were in network, I never offered people their costs. We just gave them that regular bullshit you get when you call a health practitioner's office.
Yeah.
Oh, 20% a customer is reasonable, and you hang up and you're like, cool, I have no idea what I owe, but we show up. And then I realized when we went out at network, it was like, well, nobody gets their cost in healthcare. I was like, I went to my billing team and I went to my ops guy and I went, why can't we give people costs? And I talked to my billing team and they were like, we can ask, right? And so we came up with this whole process. It was pretty cool, dude. And so I was answering the phones, learning a lot, doing it real shitty, right?
Yeah.
Trying to get people to understand why they should come see us. Part of that process I realized was that healthcare was the only business on the face of the earth that you have no idea what your cost is going to be going in, and half the time you don't know what your cost is be while you're in it. And I
Yeah.
was like, well, if we're going to run this like a business, we have to give people their costs. So again, this journey, this took years and years and years. You know, I talk about it now. One day I was giving a talk in like 15 minutes. I explained like everything. I realized at the end of 15 minutes, I looked at the group of people I was speaking to and I went, you realize I just told you in 15 minutes what took me like 15 years to learn. I was like, this is an unbelievable moment.
Yeah.
But that's where, so going from, we're going out at network, oh my God, we're going to have to talk to people differently,
Mhm.
right? So then I took over the sales process on the front end, not because I thought I could do it. This is what's interesting, but because I knew I had to learn the system and process of moving someone from first phone call to arrival
Mhm.
before I could hire someone and train them into that. I said I was going to do it for 3 months. I loved it and I was learning so much. I stuck with it for about a year in my own business.
Yeah.
So I answered all those new client calls. And then that's where I fell in love with sales, right? So I got away from the marketing side. And that's where I really got into sales. And the business remained open, and I mean, we made it through. So I like to think that, you know, I did something productive, and on the tail end of that, right, then came up with, wow, these systems and processes could work for anybody. And then that's when I got out. I created a client experience company, of which now I come in and create the front end sales processes, what I call the pre-arrival process. I'll build out the systems, I'll train, I bring the, for lack of a better term, scripts, I bring it all so that we can get that front end non-clinical team trained up to set the patients, the user up for success.
So walk me through that. Like you're, from a business perspective, number one, knowing your numbers is everything. And the fact that healthcare, it's like a taboo thing almost.
You are 100%. And it's so funny how everybody comes in like you, right? Not a provider, not from healthcare. And you're like, why is it so taboo to talk money? Oh my
Yeah.
God, right?
And I said, and one of the guys that we both know, Tony Maritato, and he's mentioned that, you guys are just good with muscles. I'm good with money. And
Yeah,
it's,
there you go. There you go.
but knowing as a business owner, your numbers is crucial because then you have no idea what's going on. You could be the best
Huge.
provider in the world operating at a deficit. And you won't be in
And by
business.
the way, dude, there are more stories of that than there are the people. You know, what's scary about those, here, let's go into that part a little bit.
Yeah.
Just real quick. I realized this, I realized this early on because there were a couple questions I would ask other owners, and if they would pause, I was like, hold, know your numbers.
Mhm.
And one of them, I mean, they were simple: revenue per visit, cost per visit, right? Stuff like that. And we ran into, so we have our business. We find a clinic close by that wanted to sell. We looked at their numbers, had someone help us run the numbers, really high level, right? Not that
Yeah.
deep. But we realized, check this out, we realized that they were not profitable, but yet they were still open and still operating. We're like, so we're sitting across with the owners and we're like, hey, there's a discrepancy here. I'm wondering how you manage this. And that it mathed, what I tell you next, mathed out perfectly. The owners, between the two of them, would skip 2 to 3 paychecks a year. And that was the difference between being non-profitable and being able to pay the team and staying just a little. But yeah, we just skip a couple paychecks a year. So back to your point, right? Yeah, it was like, wait a minute, what? So, but yet that's what they were doing for 20 years. They were taking a paycheck. They were paying their team and everything, but they'd skip a couple a year and it was fine.
Yeah, it was fine for
But
them, but
needless to
then
say,
go to
right.
sell the business and tell that to a seller, like, hey, listen, you're gonna buy
Yeah.
a business. Just know that like midway through the year, you're not getting paid.
Yeah, right. They're
And
like,
then at
hey,
the end of the year, your Christmas bonus doesn't exist.
hey, and yeah, and someone you're talking to, you want to sell them, and you tell them that, and they're like, cool, don't call us, we'll call you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So the whole number side, yeah, you're right. And that's a big, big part of what I learned during this journey is I love this term, what metrics matter,
Mhm.
right? Because we had our big Excel sheet. And this is what I think healthcare owners go one of two ways, dude. They either measure too small or they're measured too much. And there's no middle ground. And they can't tell you the value, really, what numbers really, it's almost that what numbers, it's not what's most important, but what number really gives me the answer I need today? Like, what can I look at on a weekly, monthly basis without having to scour through all these, right?
Yeah.
And so I learned that a lot. And I learned about the impact of looking at one of the numbers that rarely anybody measures in healthcare, and now is one of my leading questions is what is your churn? What is your drop-off rate? And healthcare has a huge drop-off churn problem, but no one owns it. What I realize is no one owns it because they don't even measure it. So it's like you don't even know what you don't know.
Yeah, we always say when we're working with clients, like, whether it's a clinic owner, a PT, a surgeon, you know, if you can track it or measure it, it can be managed.
Yeah. And then take the next step. So, right. So I'm going to go with the owner who's measuring everything and really
Yeah.
does the value of it. So they go, cool, John, I get that. So look at everything we measure. Then I always like to tell me what each of those numbers tell you about the health
Yeah. What does
of
it
your
mean?
business, right? Yeah. So what is the impact when this number changes, when this number changes? And I really learned that when I started learning the value of this pre-arrival process. So lead conversion, right? Here's another metric, interesting. Clinic owners across the country will tell you, right? Oh, my front desk, they're responsible for getting people scheduled. I'm like, scheduled? I said, when's the last time a scheduled patient paid your bills? Right? So I was like, the metric has arrived.
Yeah.
Scheduled is just a step in a process. I'm
Correct.
like, sometimes I look at that, but most of the time I don't. I want to know lead to arrived. Right? I had 100 leads, 70 of them arrived. Yeah, I might, depending on, right, if I know what I need for the business to be successful, that may be good enough and I don't ask any questions,
Right.
right? So again, which numbers are of value and tell you what you need to know about the business is so important. Most, as I shared from that earlier example, I call it managing by the bank account, right? Which is a disaster.
Yeah.
And I probably did that for a while too. It's just, oh, there's money in the bank. Cool. Business is good. You're like, right?
Yeah. No,
Oh,
it's very blinding,
yeah.
And so would you say that from your experience, now what you're doing with the client experience coach specifically, what would you say is the number one metric or top two, whatever you want to for clinic owners that are watching this to say, oh, maybe I'm not measuring that and I should be, or I am, but not looking at it as the most important. Would you
Yeah.
say that
I think that
alignment
drop
rate?
off rate, yeah, that drop off rate, but let's flip because, right, drop off is the negative number. The positive number is arrivals, right?
Mhm.
So arrival, I think, is overall is going to give you the best shot into the business at any given time. As long as you do this, break it up to first visit, arrival, and all other visits, right? Because this is what's interesting about physio, right? Physical therapy is you can't have 10 visits without having the first visit. So I have
Yeah.
this phrase I say here, go back to this. All visits are valuable, yet not all visits have the same value, right? The first visit. So again, this came out of answering the first phone call, and I realized during this course of answering the first phone call that I was not having let's just say for argument's sake, I'm not a math guy, so I'm going to keep it easy. Let's say a visit is worth $100, right? So you're like, hey, it's $100 a visit. We average 10 visits, so a case is worth $1,000. I'm like, cool. And I ran with this forever until one day I went, but that first visit is not $100 visit. That's $1,000 visit. So I said, how many of you going to your front desk team would be comfortable? How many of your front desk people would be comfortable if you said, you know, you're not putting $100 visits on the schedule. You're putting, when you answer that first phone call, that's $1,000 phone call. So again, an arrival, right? First visit arrival has to be the focus. And then we look at all the others. So arrival, and then we look at first visit arrival, and then the rest of arrival instead of looking at drop-offs. You could look at drop-offs, but I like to focus on the positive side of that.
Yeah.
So your overall arrival rate, your first visit arrival rate, and then all other arrival rate. Because if those are in place, John, then everything else falls into place, right? Because that means people are showing up. That means people are having a good experience. That means people are getting better. That means you're billing. That means you're collecting copays. That means, right, cash flow is good. You know, all relative. But again, if that arrival rate's where it should be, then you know that's really an upstream number, right? That's a, shall we say, it's a, well, in this example, it's a leading indicator. In some other examples, it might be lagging, but it's definitely a leading indicator that if your arrivals are where they need to be, then the business is, you can predict other things about the business. So I really like that number as an individual single number, because then if we want to go to like conversion rate, cancels, everything, well, that still flows down from arrival,
From
right?
that, yeah. And there's only, and it's, what you're saying to me is you only get one shot at that first impression.
Yeah, well, here we go again, right? Which
Yeah.
is something else I learned, that the further upstream we go. So, right, in healthcare, all we care about is getting people in front of the provider. And by the way, I was that guy for like 8, 9 years in my
You're
business.
taught, yeah.
Yeah. And then I realized I started answering the phone. I started working with the front desk team. I'm like, we can really impact this downstream stuff. First visit arrival, cancels, drop-offs, no-shows, all that, by the way we managed what I call the pre-arrival phase, which is owned by your front desk team. So the first impression, and then I would say there's the first impression, but that pre-arrival phase, which could be, let's say you call, you're on the schedule tomorrow, John, that pre-arrival phase could be 12 hours or it could be 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So a huge opportunity, because I call that whole 3 weeks or 12 hours the first impression, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, the same thing is when I'm working with these people who are doing it with their patients, it's you book them, you have the first meeting with them, what are you doing in between that time?
Yeah,
So I've even
correct.
sent people like a book to read in between them, something
Any of it.
complete
And
to
there's
make them
nothing,
feel,
really,
yeah,
there's nothing wrong as long as I see people doing all kinds of stuff. They go, what about this? And I'm like, awesome.
try
Is
it.
it, so I always say, is it building trust, right? Is it building trust? Is it building expertise? Is it decreasing fear, doubt, and uncertainty? And anything you name, pretty much, a book, a video, anything, does all that. And I'm like, you're good to go. Nice
Yeah,
work, right?
and test it. If it works, it works. If
Cracks me
not,
up.
yeah.
Cracks me up that people do nothing. They got someone, they hang up the phone. I'm like, when they schedule 2 weeks out, what happens next? Well, we send them their paperwork. What else? That's it. Just wait for them to show up. I'm like, they're going to show up.
Yeah,
Like,
what's incentivizing them to not just
right. And then I'm like, right, why are they going to show up?
yeah,
That's one of my favorite questions. After someone hangs up the phone, I go, so John, how'd that call go? Oh, went well. Got him on the schedule? Yeah. When? Next Friday, 5 days away. I go, cool. Tell me why he's going to show up. And
exactly.
just let them tell me it. And it has to be different than if they called the another clinic, right? Down the street.
Correct. Because what's preventing that? Then you're just the same thing that everyone else is doing. And that's
All
really
of this,
big. Yeah.
all of this I learned right after start taking over the front end systems and all this stuff, man, and just turned it into a real business.
Yeah.
And by the way, people hate to talk about money. They hate the word sales in healthcare too, right?
Well, I'm of the notion that, nothing really happens in this life unless someone sells something. Someone's selling regardless. Whether it's clinic A or clinic B down the road, the person breaks their ankle or injures their back, they're going somewhere. It's either you or someone else. And
So
that's
how
a
are you
really
gonna
big,
manage that, right? So how are you gonna eat? And you better have structure so that, if you have 3 different people managing that initial contact, that pre-arrival phase, then we got to have that consistency right across all three to know that that pre-arrival system is being managed. And so that's where I come in, right? I'm working with a client currently for my virtual front desk self solutions company. But yeah, we've spent the last 5 weeks on the phone building out his front end system. He said, "Hey, Jerry, I want to work with you. I know you can get me a person, but we need help building out our pre-arrivals base." And I said, "Cool." So I had an opportunity to do a little of both, right? Where I get on the phone with the owner and their head of their front desk team, and we put together, and it's nice. It's great getting like the clinic manager, the front desk manager on there. Let me tell you right now, 90+% of the time, they understand the business better than the owner.
They're in it. Yeah. They're seeing the day-to-day things, you
I
know.
love having them both on a call, and I'll ask a question, the owner will say something. I can see the face of the clinic manager or front desk manager. I'm like, and then just very politely, "So what do you think about that? What would you say about that?" And their answer is different, right?
Yeah.
Guess who I trust?
Oh yeah. And would you say there's a very from the people that you're working with and the owner specifically, because again, at the end of the day, it is their decision. It's their business. Would you say in the PT space specifically, there's too much of a disconnect? Or
Yeah.
would
Well, here, let's clarify that, John. So my gut was yes. Yeah, let's clarify just a little bit.
yeah,
Right. So this is what's interesting about healthcare, but I guess it'd be like any other industry, right? We're good providers, we're good here. So that's always where our focus is.
yeah,
And yet the thing I bag on healthcare about is we won't own the fact that we don't know the front end very well, the disconnect. And so not only is there a disconnect, we don't acknowledge it. So man, how is that? So then we hire front desk people. Let me run with this. And I run into people, yeah, we can't keep a front desk person here. We can't find the right person. I go spend about 2 weeks talking to their front desk team and them on the call. And I'm like, no wonder no one's staying. They
yeah.
don't understand it. There's the total disconnect. They keep yelling at their front desk to get people scheduled, get people off the wait list. There's no systems, no structure for it. And so the front desk team wisely says, I don't want to work here, right? And by the way, I'm going to tell you right now, I gave a talk in November to mostly front desk people in a room, yet there were a lot of owners sitting next to the front desk people. They get it. They get it again, John, because they're in it and they get it and they know a lot more than we give them credit for. And I really, 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 God's honest truth, I love working with front desk team members more than anything else now.
So is that
With the
mostly
clinic
who you're
manager,
working with when say you get Jim who owns PT Clinic A? You're saying, listen, I'm going to explain this to you, but I want to work with the people, the troops on the ground.
yeah, so I have a
Bring them.
structure in place. So the owner's involved. I'll do a, I call it an exec meeting or an owners meeting every week. But I'm going to, yeah, because the work to be done, and then who's going to deliver that work is the troops on the ground, right?
Yeah.
So, currently what I do when I come in and do this work, I end up recording all the calls and then anything we create like a Google Drive. So basically what I'm doing is I'm building out the SOPs and training and onboarding for these groups, right? And I
Yeah.
didn't realize that when I first started, but that's what I'm doing. So we record the calls so they can review, the owners can go over, but I also get on the phone with the owners once a week so we can review it. Yeah. And so I've got a little process in place where everybody gets their input, but then when it's time to do the work, I just meet with the front desk or the clinic manager.
To get that, because they're the ones actually implementing everything.
Yeah.
Got it.
And I really enjoy it because I'll tell you what else has been a great little side effect that I really didn't know. Usually, I'm going to say on average, it's about a 3 to 6 month process to build it out, get people trained up, get the SOPs done. I'll tell you what's really cool, and it happens more times than not, is the training is active, right? I mean, we do a week of training, they're on the phone all week.
Yeah.
So what's really cool is when we start to see the changes before we're even done, right? A change in arrival rates, mostly, right? A drop in cancel rates, a drop in drop-offs, right? And we're like 2 months in, and we still have 2 months worth of work. Man, I got to tell you, it makes my life a hell of a lot easier. And
Yeah.
that stuff's happened, right? And so, yeah, and so you see the change during this process. right? The front desk starts to believe, the owner starts to believe. It's cool because you're not just going, okay, have some faith in me. You'll see the results in a year. See you later, right?
You see it quickly, which is good. Sometimes that's not always the case. Listen, you're going to have to stick to this for 6 months.
Yeah.
to see any
And so
results.
that's been really cool is the way the training setup is, right? There's a lot of it's very proactive and active, right? Because I'll listen to calls, right? And we break down the calls. So we do a training and then I'll listen to calls from the week that they're taking. And then we'll continue the training and we'll be breaking down calls. So as we're building this thing out, right, we start to see improvement. It's really cool to see the impact in cancels downstream, right? So after first visit,
Yeah.
decrease just by training the front desk, drop offs downstream, decreasing by just training the front desk. No shows disappear. That's what I say. All my clients, at least, because there's nothing I can get to zero, but goddamn, no shows we can get
Pretty close.
pretty close. Yeah, so I like that. And then again, if those things are going in the right direction, then like we said, the business is going to be trending in the right way. There's no new services, no new hires, no new equipment, no new products. All we're doing is training. So if those metrics change in the right direction, theoretically, I look at top line because I can't control people's expenses, but we're
Correct.
going to change top line. But I'm like, but why wouldn't your bottom line go up? Because at this point, we haven't added any expense except for what you're paying me.
Yeah, we
So
haven't added a new, hey, you need XYZ device. That's
yeah,
$30,000.
yeah, that's $30,000 that we got to figure out an ROI on. I go, your only ROI is me.
Yeah. I'll get my feedback that you pay me, but then everything else, as long as you continue.
And that's what I love when they
Compounding.
start paying, when they start hitting their numbers and I realize their increase is greater when I'm charging them, right? So I'm like, you're already net positive on this relationship.
Yeah, exactly. Your ROI is positive, and that's at the end of the day what they want. Now, my next
Correct.
question for you is like, all right, you're going to start a clinic from scratch. Let's
Yeah,
say you're a PT who's been doing it about, let's call it 15 years. And you're like, you know what? I just can't do the patient care, as much anymore. I'm just getting burnt out. Like, I want to be a business owner. What would you say, or like, doesn't have to be three, but what would be the things that you need to have in place, knowing what you know now? And for people listening who are thinking about this is kind of for them of, hey, make sure this is in place. Worry about the other stuff after. What would those things be now looking hindsight for them?
real quick, I want to start with what not to do because this is where everybody starts. Everybody starts, and you see it, John, and you probably see it in the conversations. And you're looking from the outside in. I'm hoping you notice it more. Everybody loves to tell you, oh, I'm going out on my own. Oh, great. What are you going to do? I'm starting a cash-based business. I'm like, what is that? What's a cash-based business? That means zero, right? So what you don't do, and I'm really trying to get people off of this, is you don't lead with the payer model. There's no other industry. You might be able to help me out on this. I've literally challenged people. I go find another industry that'll tell you their business just based on the payer model. I'm
Yeah.
like, there is none. Oh, I'm starting a cash-based business. I'm like, what? So what? You'll go out of business faster? I don't know what you're telling me. So don't do that. So the three things, number one is know who you're going to serve, right? You can't serve everybody. So find out who, and I say this word broadly, find out who you want to serve in your community. Now, your community could be brick and mortar, it could be online, but you have a community that you can impact. Number one is you have to know who you're going to serve. Then number two is you got to decide how you want to serve them. Is it going to be hybrid model? Is it going to be brick and mortar? Is it going to be brick and mortar with some phone and telehealth? Is it going to be in a gym? Is it going to be in a hospital? Right. So know that. And then once you know who you're going to serve, this niche, and I'm going to call it a niche, I don't care. And you know how you're going to serve them, then build the systems around creating success for them. And success is far more than just getting them better. It's how am I going to manage the first phone call so that it increases the likelihood of clients who arrive, pay, and stay. So those three things. And I got to tell you, not a lot of people are doing that.
Are they mostly looking in, and I've seen it too, from my perspective of the whole cash versus insurance based model, and the insurance models, at least what I is scream from the rooftops is insurance models dead. You have to go cash based or just sell to one of these conglomerates. That's the only way.
So
And
what they'll
yeah,
do, John, what they'll do, and this is the other kind of like, I'm like, I don't like to make people feel bad, but I'm like, so you're not going to take insurance? No, no, no. And they'll go A, B, and C, and I'll go, well, what happens if it's actually meet your margin? And then there's just dead air.
yeah,
So they make this financial decision before they even know who they're going to serve, what the costs are, what they want to generate. It just, I'm not going to take insurance. I'm like, why not? They can't give you a good reason because I'm like, if the insurance covers your margin, then you'd be stupid
not to.
not to. I'm like, that's why everybody's like, oh, Jerry, you hate this, you hate that. I'm like, no, I hate people who don't understand their numbers and who lead by telling you their business, their payer model. I'm like, it doesn't happen anywhere. So
Yeah,
understand who you want to serve, understand how you want to deliver the service, and then create. By the way, this is where step three is where you decide, right? And start learning. You know this. I'm just saying this out loud for the people listening. Step three is where you start to go, okay, what am I going to charge? Who am I going to serve? I have helped people, just for clarity, I have helped people fully contracted. I have helped people fully just taking cash out of pocket. I call it out of pocket. So what people call cash pay, I call out of pocket,
yeah.
fully out of pocket. And I've helped everybody in between. I've also helped a guy who set up, who his mission was X% of his visits had to be free visits. Well, cool. So guess what? It fit the scenario. He knew who he wanted to serve. He knew how he was going to deliver it. Then he came up with that. And guess what? I helped him run his numbers in the business model he wanted to do. So we knew exactly how much he needed to charge the paying people.
Yeah.
Like, I should say collect. Charge is almost a fake number in healthcare. He knew how much he needed to collect per paid visit to give him back his 25% of unpaid visits.
Cover the rest.
We called it no fee visits. I like that word. We called it no fee visits. But again, he came from the right place. And guess what? He hit some bumps in the road. But guess what? He's doing way better than people claim to be cash pay now, who didn't want half of the shit that they claim he does. I'm like, but he's more successful than you.
Yeah. At the
So
end of the day,
again,
the numbers don't lie.
it was never about a payer model, right? Was my point. He knew who he wanted to serve. He knew how he wanted to do it. And now, how are we going to deliver this whole experience, these systems and processes to get you paid for these visits and this? It was a lot of fun, dude.
That's
Actually,
I've never heard of that before. That's really cool. I mean,
yeah,
like
and
it's like anything, if you know your numbers, you can make it work.
you are correct, right? And this is what's crazy about, oh, I'm not taking any contracts. I'm like, what about the one that pay? What about the ones that pay well?
Yeah.
I'm like, why wouldn't you run the numbers, man? I mean, that's your job, right, John? You know, you run the numbers,
Yeah.
see what the numbers look like. So yeah, so those are the three things I would do, and based on that, you know, every once in a while, I'm like, my wife even was like, hey, we should open another business. I'm like, oh, you're crazy. But, if these three criteria were met, and again, I know the specific audience I'd want to work with, pretty much know how I want to deliver it. And then even the payer model is almost flipped on its head where it'd be a low barrier of entry for the actual consumer of the product, but we get it from another side, a resources side. So yeah, I mean, I've run through that through my head and currently talk, a person or two about this, probably not so much opening the business, but helping them and being part of it.
Yeah. And that kind of segues into my next question of like, what's your current opinion on what you're seeing going on? Because from someone who's in it, but I'm not practicing or anything, but outside looking in and knows more than the average advisor would about this space of this massive private equity movement, almost like there's this whale coming in, like your Jags, your Ivies of the world, your ATIs coming in, and these mom and pop shop almost feel like squeezed out. Do you feel like it's going to be almost like a rubber band snap where that's going to have to give at some point, because then they're just going to be able to charge whatever the heck they want, or just drive costs down and say, yeah, we're going to undermine you by this. I actually spoke to a clinic owner the other day who I work with, and he said, like, we're almost like the last line of defense of being able to charge what we want and get reimbursed and still be profitable before they just take over, and then something's going to have to give. Like, what are you currently seeing right now? And I guess that kind of can lead to my next question that we'll get to. But I want to kind of get your thoughts on that, because I'm definitely on top of clinic owners' mind. I know even PTs contemplating starting it, because they're like, why start it if I should just go work for them? And I'm like, well, slow down. There's a different approach here, and there's got to be something about that. So I kind of want to get your thoughts on that.
So number one is you have to differentiate, right? So it's so funny how everybody comes out and says, I'm going to do this just like them. And I'm like, so why are people going to choose you? So
Yeah.
again, leading with the question, why are people going to choose you when Ivy's across the street, right?
Yeah.
And I think there are enough differentiators that you could set up. Yet you and I both know they're mostly based on a experience you have with that company, right? So
Yes.
here we are back to the experience, right? And the research is out there, and I pull it up and other people pull it up. Right? The research is out there that people will pay more for a good experience. People will pay more for something they enjoy doing. Now, enjoy doing meaning, right, was the front desk, did where my expectations at. So if you can create this model and differentiate yourself based on the experience, and you can deliver the results downstream, then you'll be successful. I said it earlier. And so where I believe people like are maybe a new clinic owner or current clinic owner just needs to focus, and I already said this, and this works perfectly, is they need to claim their community. Where is my value in my community? By the way, your community could be the city, it could be the state, could be online, right? Where is my value to the community I want to serve?
Mhm.
I'm really looking at that. So with that said, you describe what I would call kind of this model that is slowly but surely starting to exit itself out, right? So unless you have this big buying power, you can't get the better contracts. You can't do this in the old game. Because remember, we're still talking about fighting for dollars in the old system, in the old fee for service. They're just looking for more visits. I know some of the groups are looking at different things, but still basically they're looking for better contracts to continue to deliver tertiary care fee for service. That means you sit around and you twiddle your thumbs and you wait for someone to get injured to call.
Mhm.
So what I tell the current owners I'm working with and stuff is, look, make this right, get everything dialed in, make sure you know what you're measuring, who are you serving, how are you going to serve them, how are we going to market this so people know you're different, then how are you going to deliver on the difference? Yet then sitting and waiting for people to get injured is not going to be the future. So here's my answer to your question is we need to start looking at direct to consumer, direct to groups, going directly to places, moving ourselves upstream so that people choose us when they get injured, not the ER, not their primary care doc, not the ortho doc, but they're choosing you. And your biggest opportunity for this is your own community. Again, this all feeds back. So getting out there, and by the way, my podcast I just taped about 13 podcasts. What's best for the patient is best for
I saw
business.
you just posted that on LinkedIn too, so I was
Yeah,
going to bring that up.
so because I'm getting ready to roll out a whole like 13-part series called The Future is Yesterday, and the whole conversation is about doing this work. So I'm telling people, no, you don't blow up the model. You're still people still need tertiary help, but if you're gonna thrive and strive in the future, you got to go upstream. You got to go direct to the employer. You got to go direct to consumer. You got to become the first stop,
Yeah.
right? Not the tertiary. So that tertiary care model, that means we're like this third level of care, right? First they go to their doctor, then they do this, then they get to us. I'm like, no, we got to
Doctor,
go up.
ortho. Okay,
Yeah,
now you need PT.
yeah. So we really have to work with, oh, here's my new favorite quote. We got to work from the neck up, right? We're so treatment and service oriented. We sell what we can do down here, but I'm like, the value is from neck up. Our ability to triage our ability to manage people and see, this is the interesting thing, John. The future is going to be in you as a business owner owning the front door, owning the funnel, because it's going to be more valuable to you overall at the end of a year to keep people out of your office than to put them in the office. Now, what I mean by that is you're still going to be managing people, but over telehealth, over the phone with instructions. The people that have to come into the clinic are going to be like the post-op people or the truly acute people who need to be on the clinic, need that direct connection. But those people are going to cost you more money.
Yeah.
So there's my view of the future, my friend. The further upstream we go, the better off. And by the way, there is far, far more money upstream than there is in the current model. So if you want to look at it purely from a dollar side, we're never going to impact the insurance. I've been in this 32 years. Here's the big secret that is absolutely not a secret at all. We're never going to impact the insurance company and what they're paying us reimbursement. So
yeah. And there's a massive movement for that. I mean, full disclosure, I work with insurance companies, whether it's life insurance, disability insurance, you name it. They are powerful. And, it's going to be very hard to move them, but there's ways of adapting to them.
Now, right. And so what I'm saying, thank you for saying that, is that same insurer that you're pinging for a treatment or service will absolutely pay you more if you go upstream and bring greater value to the system. And by the system, I mean to their clients, to their users, to their payers, right? So this is the thing I'm saying is that same insurance company. I had a great one. The one of the podcasts rolling out is with Chris Spies. And we talk about this. He works inside PUMC, which is one of the largest insurers in the nation and owns the whole state of Philly. Oh, sorry, Philly, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And they're doing some great studies. So the insurance company knows, and the insurance company knows PTs are far more valuable upstream. They know it. It's in the research they're doing. Right. So we got to leverage this going forward.
So that my next question would be, I guess, you have a ton of knowledge. You've done this before. What is the ideal clinic, or where do you feel like, all right, this is already in place? Me coming in, Jerry coming in, and you guys, whether it's the client experience co or your other business that you have, one of the two that you would plug in and say, okay, I can take them to the next level. Because you're definitely, like you said, you got to find your market. You're not for everybody.
I'm not going to lie. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. The bigger the impact. So if you follow me on social media this week, and I'm running, it runs for like the next 3 weeks. I keep pounding on this true story of a potential client, not my client, who I have a loss calculator. So I look at drop offs and stuff like that. And I can tell you pretty quickly. Now, I can paint a picture for your business. And of course, there's no such thing as 100% capacity, but we have to know that number. Again, what does the number tell us, right? So I have an equation to show people how much money they're currently losing at their current arrival rate. And by losing, saying, what's the margin to be pinched? Right? If you're losing this much, man, we change 5-10%, you got a huge upside. But I talked with a multi-site practice who in the loss calculation is losing 1.7 million a year in their current model. Mind you,
yeah,
that's people already. This is why I got out of the marketing side, because you can't prove what I'm going to prove. So I come in and I go, I can get 50% of that back to you, and it's only going to cost you this much. Those are from people who've already raised their hand and said, I want to do business with you. This isn't new marketing. By the way, they're losing 1.7. I'm like, I'll help you get $1 million back. How much you want to pay me? Because all I do is come in and build out the systems with their people, with their current processes. And we plug the holes, no new hires, no new systems, right? So the bigger, the better. Now, mind you, I try to convince the smaller people to do the work, but they'll tell you they can't afford me. They'll tell you they can't pay. But I'm like, do you want to be the company losing 1.7 million? And by the way, that's a rounded down number. So the number was even higher. That's a realistic number.
Yeah.
So I'm like, do you want to grow and be the company losing 1.7 million, or would you rather make a third of that, a quarter of that back and put it in your pocket? And John can help you manage it, by the way, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So my ideal client is the big.
Almost like slapping that meme that you have with the oh God, what's his name? The Flexio where you're slapping it on the
Oh
bucket.
yeah, dude, I saw that.
You
Yeah,
need like a
yeah.
meme of that now. I think I'm gonna have to post that of like, client experience.
Literally
Oh,
50, right? The
leaky
leak,
buckets. Yeah.
right?
Because
Yeah.
you're
And
saying
so,
they're already showing up. They've already said, I'm willing to do business. It's just they're not showing or
yeah.
whatever
Now
the
you and
case
I
may be.
know, unfortunately, so does the state of Maryland, that those ships don't turn very quickly,
Yes.
right? Because I grew up in the Bay Area, so I mean, I've seen those cargo ships come and go, right? Through the
Yeah.
port of Brooklyn and stuff, one of the largest ports on the West Coast. And you see those guys, right? And it takes them like two turns to make a left turn, right?
Yeah.
So the bigger they are, the longer. I worked with a clinic, but I worked with a clinic, in Jersey recently with 4 offices, and we made some impact. It took us a little longer, but it was a lot of work, man, because they had a lot of people, a lot of old systems, a lot of people that weren't too excited to change. They're in the middle of it. They just want to go and do their work and go home, rightfully
That
so.
autopilot, like,
Yeah.
and soon boom, you're gonna hit that bridge.
So yeah, it's just a matter of how hard do you want to drive that car until you kill it, or do you want a fine-tuned, right, machine that's going to last you forever and continue to give you an ROI, right?
And I love
And
that.
at the
Yeah.
same time, keep increase. So think about that, losing 1.7. So I could put more money on your bottom line now, but when it comes time to sell, the number is going to be huge, right? So I'm talking about cash flow today, but when you go to sell the value of this place and the multiple, because you have the processes in place to reproduce it, I'm like, you want to pay me out of that? Of course, nobody does, right? So I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, why are you so expensive? I'm like, because you're going to get cash flow now, and you're going to make money off of me when you sell this place. And you're going to make way more zeros behind it than I'm going to charge you. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the business 101 is if I charge you $10,000, but I can bring $100,000 in the door, for me,
And
it's a
why not?
no-brainer.
Right. And I show
No-brainer.
people on paper how we're going to do that.
Yeah.
But man, I got to tell you, man, we love our status quo in healthcare.
Yeah. It's almost like par for the
We're
course.
comfortable with this bottom line. We don't care. I don't even want to know how much is losing because I'm happy with this bottom line. I'm like, okay, if you're happy with that, then we're not.
Yeah, it's
We're,
just not a good fit. And that's good to know for people watching this that, hey, listen, you're looking for the person who's saying, where's the bottleneck or where is the issues that I'm having or that I'm naive to? Because like this is something that most clinic owners, PTs that I talk to, they'd say, you need to deliver a better experience in the clinic. You need a better, whatever you're using, the machines need to be better, the space needs to be better. That's where everyone looks. And it's almost like that's how we're taught or lack of teaching. Whereas what if you just looked at, you're getting in a monthly basis, I don't know the numbers exactly, but let's just call it 1,000 people are willing to work with you and you're getting 500 to show, which by your numbers is pretty bad. But let's
yeah.
say you get that to 70,
I mean,
700
think
people,
about that,
70%.
right? At that volume, dude, that 20% increase is ginormous, right?
Oh my God. It's hundreds of thousands of not millions of dollars a year that
That
you're losing.
1.7 million wasn't even, yeah, it was probably around 20%. That's how big it
So
was.
there you go. Yeah, I just made up that number and it ended up working out. But
It,
that's
it, it was close by. It was
yeah,
close by in there. No, that the increase that we were looking at was about a 20% increase. That was it,
yeah,
dude. To get
yeah.
that much more. I'm like,
Heck, if I
how
could
did
do that, yeah, if I could do that in my
I'm
business.
so baffled by the responses I get. But those are the clinics, those people saying, I want to improve this experience currently without making a capital investment. It's not a capital investment, man. Right. And this is what I keep telling people. I leave it all behind. I told you, we record it all. We build out the SOPs. It keeps feeding itself.
Yeah, it's reusable at that point. It's okay, we got away from it. Let's get back to it. Boom. And
So then they got more money and then they need John because we got all this money, dude. We got
that's the goal.
we got
That's the goal.
buckets
Go
and
see
buckets.
Jerry,
What are
come
we
see
gonna do with
John.
this, John? Okay.
But yeah, no, I love it. And it's a really, there's not many people I've seen in the space thinking this way. It's more of you need to be a better business owner or change the way that you're treating patients or go cash based or whatever it is. And while that might be true in some spaces, why not look at the first entry
By the
point
way, I've
of the
helped people with
business?
all of that because, right? what I love is an in-network clinic says, we're going out in network or we're adding cash services. I'm like, you can't even sell your current stuff. How is this going to help you?
Yeah.
So I jump on that and say, let me help you establish the processes and systems to
And then
feed
grow.
this beast, right? And it'll blow up. I promise you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't just, I always say a lot of times the grass is always greener. It's just spray painted.
Yeah, I love it.
And
And that's
eventually
what they're
that
doing,
fades.
right? Oh, we added cash-based services. I'm like, yeah, so you sprayed the green grass, so it looks better over there. I'm like,
Yeah.
no one's going over there.
First 2 months are great, and all of a sudden back to square one, except you're now managing two things instead of one. So I think that that's the first line of defense is, hey, figure out, what's going on from your sales perspective. That's what it is at the end of the day.
Well,
Everyone's
marketing to sales, right? I say I don't do smart,
correct.
but my
Yes.
first question is, hey, tell me about your marketing because we got to connect it to the sales process, right?
Yeah. So now my question for you is to kind of wrap this all up, and I really appreciate you. There's a lot of knowledge here for clinic owners or people potentially even thinking about getting in that space of, what's the best way to connect with you if you're interested, if this is something that's appealing to you, what does that process look like? Just so we
Yeah.
can kind of wrap up on that.
Yeah. If you go to any of my social media, I'm on it every day, meaning I'm looking at DMs and stuff. So I have a great YouTube channel. It's Jerry Durham, DURHAMPT. Most of the content I charge for is on there. If someone's willing to go through and puzzle piece that stuff together, it's all on there. I pride myself on putting it all out there. I have the podcast. This is April 1st. It should be out about mid-April. I would highly recommend you go listen to the Future is Yesterday series. That speaks to a lot of this stuff. Again, you can message me on YouTube. I love my Instagram. It's really business focused. So Jerry Durham PT yet again. And if you
Perfect.
message me there, I'll get it. I'm also on Twitter. I'm on Facebook, Jerry Durham PT. Twitter is Jerry Durham PT. And then, if someone wants to email, it's jerry@jerrydurhampt.com. If you go to my website, clientexperiencecompany.com, go to the last page, there's a schedule a call page.
Perfect. And
All
I'll
of
make sure to put everything for anyone listening in the comment section below so that they have it. They can reach out to you if any questions. Jerry, I appreciate you coming on. It was great getting to know you better.
Thank you,
I look
Joe.
forward to staying connected for months to come. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.